Hi, this is Mike Mercier with Screen Education, and I would like to present to you the findings of a survey we conducted in the summer of 2021 with high school students. And the focus of the survey was on getting the reaction to a series of broad solutions to the problem of smartphone addiction. I'll provide you a little bit of background as to what led to us having this as a goal. If you look at point number one there, basically Americans have been concerned about smartphone addiction since 2017, and that's when the news media began heavily reporting on it. So prior to 2017, a lot of people felt that they were addicted to their phones, but there was no public acknowledgement of that. So it was 2017 when the news media it was almost like it was coordinated. All of a sudden, all of them started reporting on this problem of smartphone addiction, and describing the negative consequences we were suffering because of it. And then in 2018 and 2019, the coverage just exploded, and it's continued unabated since then. Point number two, we actually started doing research on smartphone addiction in 2016, so a year before the media started covering it. And we did a bunch of focus groups that year with teens. And we've continued. Since then, we've done a total of 25 research studies. And what we've basically found through all this research is that smartphone addiction is having a really deleterious effect on young people's lives, including their academic experience. So it's really affecting their academic performance and the environment at the schools, their social life at school, their participation in extracurricular activities, things like that. Point number three, our research has also found that young people are frustrated by their smartphone addiction, and they really wish they could control it. So we're not in a situation where they're not conscious of the fact that they're addicted to their phones. They're aware. They have this feeling that they're addicted to their phones, and they're frustrated by it, and they really wish they could control it, but they can't. It's an addiction. And if you look at point number four, so here we are in this situation where kids feel like they're addicted to their phones. They wish they could control it, but they can't. They know it's having a negative effect. Yet very little has been done to address the problem. Nobody, say in government or, there are no institutions that are, the tech industry itself, there are no institutions that have collectively come together to say, well, let's impose on them and try to help them with this problem. So that leads us to point five, which was the motivation behind the survey. And that was, we wondered, given the situation, whether young people were sufficiently fed up with their smartphone addiction that they would actually welcome and be hungry for these sorts of bold, broad-based solutions. So that brings me to the primary objective of the study. So the primary objective of the survey was to get the reaction of high school kids to a set of bold, broad-based solutions to smartphone addiction. And we had secondary objectives too. So in addition to getting feedback on those broad solutions, we also looked at number one, to determine the extent of the problem of smartphone addiction among high school students. So how much of a problem is smartphone addiction in their estimation? Number two, we wanted to understand the negative consequences of smartphone addiction for high school students. Obviously this is something that we've examined in the past, but with this survey, we added some, questions that we had never, or issues we had never explored before. And we also did repeat some issues we've researched in the past just to keep updated on the current state of kids' feelings about their smartphone addiction and the problems it's causing. Number three, we sought to understand the level of concern they had about smartphone addiction. So, to what degree are they really concerned about this problem? And then number four, we want to understand the degree of their desire for assistance in addressing smartphone addiction. Very briefly about the research team, this survey was a partnership between Screen Education and Innovate MR. Innovate MR is a company that maintains research panels. So they maintain groups of people who are interested in participating in market research studies or who are willing to. And through maintaining that panel, it allows groups like Screen Education to come in and field a survey. They can basically recruit participants for the survey. And they have a platform, a big platform for maintaining the panel, maintain their connection and relationship with the panel. And the platform includes online survey software. So that was Innovate MR's contribution to the project. They provided the sample and they facilitated the survey and the recruitment. We also worked with Glenn Stark. Glenn is a statistician based in Albuquerque that I've worked with for several years now. So Glenn's been involved in a number of these national all the national surveys really that I've done on smartphone addiction. And Glenn provided all the statistical analysis on the survey. This is just a list of the people that participated in this particular project. So at Innovate MR, we had Rahul Bhatnagar, Sheetal Gupta, Brittany Nichols, Molly Strawn, and Lisa Wilding Brown, and then myself and Glenn. Very briefly, the research process. So as I said, we used Innovate MR's platform to recruit participants. So the platform is called Vision Suite. So we used their platform to recruit participants. To qualify, participants had to be 14 to 19 years old. They had to be in grades 9 through 12, so they had to be in high school, and then they had to own their own smartphone. They couldn't be in a situation where they borrow their parents or share one with a sibling. And then once we recruited people and they qualified, then they completed an online survey, which we programmed and fielded using, as I mentioned again before, Innovate MR's Vision Suite survey platform. In terms of the sample size, we ultimately had 666 students complete the survey, and that gave us a margin of error of 4%. And very briefly, I want to just quickly go through demographics, and then I'll get right into the findings. So in terms of gender, the composition of the sample of respondents, we were pretty much evenly split between males and females. In terms of grade, they were pretty evenly distributed across all the 4 grade levels, 9 through 12. In terms of race, the sample roughly reflected the racial composition of the population of the United States. And this was the breakdown in terms of ethnicity between Hispanic and non-Hispanic. So into the findings, the first area we looked at was how problematic is smartphone addiction. So how much of a problem is smartphone addiction for high school kids? And in terms of the number of hours they spend on their phones each day, they said that they spend 6 hours on their phones each day, using their phones for purposes other than school. So these would be purposes like communication, social media, streaming video, playing games, etc. So that's a substantial amount of time each day, a quarter of their day, basically, on their phones. We wanted to find out, it's well known that, COVID has had an impact on nearly everyone's time online. And we know a lot of research has been done on this, but we wanted to insert our own question about this. So we asked, have you used your smartphone more or less during the COVID lockdowns? And you'll see on the far right there, 48% said they've used their phone much more than prior to COVID. And then 28% said somewhat more. So those are substantial numbers that were not surprising at all. And then we asked, if we consider COVID to be an extraordinary situation and one where we will eventually return to normal non-lockdown conditions, where we won't be burdened at all by COVID and COVID restrictions, do you feel that you'll return to your previous level of phone use? And 62% said that they felt that they would return to their pre-COVID level of phone use once selected to return to normal. So what's really kind of remarkable there is that 38% feel that it's a permanent change, right? So that for me, that number was lower than I had thought it would be. The next issue was we asked them to estimate what percent of their friends. So you know, we're trying to get a sense for them as individuals, right? How much of a problem is smartphone addiction for them? But we also want to get their read and sense for how much of a problem it is for everyone else in their age group. So they estimated that 46% of their friends have trouble controlling and limiting how much time they spend using their smartphones each day. Now, we asked the same question again, but in a different way. So we repeated that question, but instead of using a rough definition of smartphone addiction, we just used the term smartphone addiction. And the reason we wanted to ask the question in two ways is, number one, we know some kids won't technically know the definition of addiction. So we wanted to have a question where we just use the definition so they'd understand, you know, what kind of behavior we're talking about, right? The other reason we wanted to do this is we know that the term addiction is pejorative and that there might be some resistance to identifying yourself as being addicted to your phone. So we thought, you know, if we ask the question both ways, if we see a big discrepancy between the two numbers, that could be a sign that the word addiction is causing them to respond at a lower rate than by just giving them the definition. And yeah, you see here, the numbers came out the same, whether we used a rough definition of addiction or used the word addiction. 46% said that they believe their friends were basically addicted to their phones. I'm sorry, they estimate that 46% of their friends are addicted to their phones. How frequently do you find yourself unable to control, limit, or stop yourself from using your phone? So the point here is that how often. So these are people who said, yes, I do have trouble controlling my phone use. How often do you find yourself unable to control, limit, or stop your phone use? And if you look at the far left there, 12% said all day, basically throughout the day, I have trouble controlling my phone use. 35% said frequently each day. And then 12% said once a day. And if you combine those, that gives you 59% basically said every day, I find myself unable to control, limit, or stop myself from using my phone. So my point here is that this is a daily occurrence for a lot of kids, right? And for a third of them, it's basically very often throughout the day they're behaving compulsively with their phones. They find themselves using their phones, wanting to stop, but being unable to. A third every day, throughout the day. How would you characterize your level of addiction to your smartphone? On the right there, you'll see 47% said, well, I have a medium level of addiction to my smartphone. And then on the far right, 17% said I had a high level of addiction to my smartphone. These numbers, I feel, would be, you know, if you combine that, it's 64% saying that they feel, you know, they have a medium or high level of addiction. Now, we then got into consequences of smartphone addiction. And we asked, agree or disagree, my smartphone is an obstacle to my achieving the grades I know I'm capable of achieving. So this is looking at the impact on grades. And you'll see on the right, 31% agree, and then 12% strongly agree. So if you combine those, that's 43% saying their phone is an obstacle to achieving the grades they're able to potentially achieve. Excuse me. This number is very close to a number we got 3 years ago. We did a survey 3 years ago with all teens, so 13 to 18-year-olds. It was junior high and high school, basically. And whereas this is just high school students. But in that survey, I believe it was 41% said that they feel that their phone's an obstacle to achieving the grades they're capable of achieving. So it's a very similar number. And then we asked this question: think back to the days prior to the COVID-19 lockdowns, and then indicate whether you agree or disagree with the following statement. Prior to the COVID-19 lockdowns, I spent too much time socializing with my close friends through my phone and not enough time socializing with them in person. So the whole idea behind this is, how is it affecting your socializing with friends, with close friends, right? Is it something that's, do you feel that you're spending so much time socializing online that it's crowding out perhaps a healthier form of socialization, which would be doing things in person? And you'll see on the right there, if you combine agree and strongly agree, that's 20, 30, 40% said they basically feel like they're not spending enough time with their friends in person. Um, 34% of respondents said they had at least once in the past decided to not participate in an extracurricular activity they wanted to do because they preferred to spend that time using their phone. So this was a new issue we haven't really looked into in the past. And we had a sense from focus groups, we had a qualitative sense that kids were basically deciding, I'd rather spend time on my phone. The decision was like, if I play this sport, I won't be able to spend as much time on my phone, so I won't play the sport. So we asked this question, and a third said at least once in the past they decided not to participate in an activity because they wanted to be on their phone instead. And then we got examples. So you'll see some of these examples. Top left, they didn't go to a party, they didn't meet with friends, they didn't go to the movies, the mall, grocery shopping, yard work. He said pretty much anything that has to do with my leaving my room, he's avoided because he wanted to be on his phone. Below that, dancing and hanging out, a school trip and hangouts with friends, learning the ukulele. I wanted to go to the movie theater with my friends, but I watched the movie on my phone instead. I wanted to read a book or play outside, but instead I'm doing stuff on my phone. Someone didn't, I guess, join the environmental club or do drawing. Someone else didn't attend church or the prom, art clubs, school plays, and football games. They didn't go to play soccer, didn't go to the lake with their friends, didn't look for a job, and they didn't do some activities outside. Someone else, sports, yearbook club, and student council. The last one there, any sports except basketball. In football, I would rather sit on my smartphone. So those are examples. The point there is that a third are saying that their addiction to their phone is so great, and they're so accustomed to living on their phone that they're not doing in-person activities that would be very healthy and beneficial for them. Agree or disagree, my smartphone is an obstacle to accomplishing everything I want to in life. These agree numbers are much lower than I would have expected, given the percentage who are saying they basically are spending so much time on their phone and it's a problem. So on the right there, 21% agree and 7% strongly agree. If you combine that, that's 29% say they feel that generally speaking, the phone is an obstacle to achieving, right? So like I said, I personally felt, based upon the 5 years of research I've done on this issue and all the in-person conversations I've had with kids through focus groups and one-on-one interviews, this was surprisingly low to me. 60% said their life would be more joyful if they could spend less time on their phone and more time doing other things. So that's 60% saying they're basically not as happy as they could be because of their smartphone addiction, right? Because they're incapable of spending less time on their phone. So that's sort of like a general measure of the negative effect. And then we asked them, with this question, we asked them to think about everyone else, right? Other high school kids. Do they believe, what percent of their high school friends feel that they'd be happier, right, if they could spend less time on their phones? You see, they estimated in general, 46% of high schoolers in general would be, their life would be more joyful if they could spend less time on their phone and more time doing other things. Another area we investigated was the desire to control their smartphone use. And here you'll see 69% said that they wish they had a greater ability to self-limit the time they spend using their smartphone. This number, when we did a survey 3 years ago with teens, it was 65%. So that's gone up a bit from 65 to 69. In a way, this is basically saying I can't control my phone. It's a measure of addiction in a way, right? They're saying I don't have, the ability to control my smartphone use. How often do you wish you had a greater ability to self-limit your phone use? So what we're trying to get at here is how frequently do you have this experience of thinking like, oh, I wish I could control my phone use. And again, you can look at the three left responses on the left. 14% said continuously. It's basically continuously throughout the day. 19% said frequently each day. And then 14% said once a day. And if you combine those, it's 47%, right? So 47% basically say every day. They wish that at some point every day, they wish they had a greater ability to self-limit their smartphone use. 59% have attempted to reduce their smartphone use by setting usage rules and/or limits for themselves. So what we're trying to get at here is your frustration so great, is your desire to control your phone use so great that you've taken some concrete action to try to address it, right? So 59% said, yes, I've taken some action. I've tried to reduce my phone use by setting usage rules or limits for myself. Do they wish they could get help controlling their smartphone use? 42% said they wish someone could provide them with guidance on how to more effectively self-limit or self-regulate their smartphone use. Half, or 50%, think it's a good idea to impose hard limits on the time high schoolers are allowed to spend on their smartphones each day to help them reduce their screen time. So to me, that's a remarkable number. Half are saying it's a good idea to impose limits on me and people like me. So I see that as a positive sign, and it's a real sign that they want help. So now we're getting toward the end here. This is the final part, getting into the solutions, the broad-based solutions, which I said was the main focus of the survey. So we had several categories of solutions we asked them to react to. One was school-driven solutions. So the idea here is that their school is intervening, right? And the school is trying to, in a way, have an effect on their ability to reduce their smartphone use and to develop the ability internally to control their smartphone use. So agree or disagree, schools should play a role in teaching young people how to develop the ability to self-limit their screen time. If you look at the right, 46% said they agree, and then 12% strongly agree combined. That's 58%. So basically 58%, strong majority, say schools should play a role in helping kids develop this ability to control their phone use. Should schools educate students at each grade level about smartphone addiction and try to instill in them the ability to self-limit their screen time? So this is basically, having a program, K through 12 program, right? Where every year there's a repetition of content, right? Trying to repeatedly over time get them to internalize the ability to self-limit their screen time. So it's basically making it an implicit part of the overall curriculum, right, throughout their K-12 years. And you'll see 52% agree, and then 14% strongly agree combined. That's 66%. Say schools should play this role, right, where every year they're helping kids, develop this ability to control their phone use. This was interesting. We asked them, well, what ideas do you have? What might your school do to go about instilling this in young people? And I think I have 5 slides here. I'll just read a couple, 2 slides. Number 1, engage students in more outdoor activities, allow them to enjoy the freedom of getting off their phone and connecting with the natural world. And I want to say I was impressed with a lot. They were very good ideas. Have different programs for a 72-hour phone ban, which is a great idea. And one of the reasons I think that's a great idea is I've done a lot of research on digital detoxes. So I've done a lot of research with high school kids and college kids who are in a summer camp or a remote camping environment where they don't have digital access for, in some cases, at the summer camps, it's 2, 4, 6, 8 weeks with no phone use or internet access, right? And what we found is that any extended break is extremely beneficial to the kids in terms of just, number 1, giving them a break, but also awakening them to the problems that the phones cause them, right? So having, a program where kids get a 72-hour phone break, that's a great idea. On the right there on the top, help students see that life is more enjoyable off a smartphone. Let them see how much fun playing games in real life and socializing with friends is. Great idea. They should keep teenagers more active. On the left, in California, students must take 1 semester of health class where we learn about diet, exercise, drug addiction, mental health, including smartphone addiction as course material would allow schools to teach the subject. Great idea. I believe it's something that could be discussed in English classes when reading articles to talk about its dangers, or it could be discussed in health class because smartphone addiction can lead to less physical. But those are both very good ideas. I'll do another one. Hold an assembly with motivational speakers, or one day take all the kids' phones to collaborate with others and see how they do in class for maybe a week. It's a great idea. Make classes more interesting. That's an idea. Maybe a class that talks about how phone addiction can negatively affect other aspects of your life. Maybe at the end of class, a teacher could tell students not to spend time on their phone. So it's sort of like coaching and reinforcing, right? So I have a couple more slides with responses like this, but you get the idea. These are really good ideas. Solutions, apps-based. So the idea here would be another broad-based, bold approach would be to have some sort of implicit in some app on the phone assistance with smartphone addiction. So we've got 2 issues here that we asked about. Agree or disagree? The companies that create the apps that are considered most addictive, which would be games, social media, streaming video, should place daily time limits on young people to help them reduce their daily screen time. Now, I want to say I got this idea from Josh Hawley, Senator Josh Hawley, who introduced a bill in July of 2019 called the SMART Act. And he was proposing that there be a law or regulation requiring that social media platforms have a daily limit of 30 minutes. So this is where I got this idea. The bill is dead, but it was introduced. So anyhow, so the idea here would, again, the idea would be to have the addictive apps to have implicit daily time limits on young people. And you'll see, so these are high schoolers responding to something that would affect them and reduce their phone use. 38% agree, and then 10% strongly agree combined. That is 48%, which is close to 50%, right? It's almost half. So, excuse me. Now, this was really interesting. Here we're asking about essentially an artificial intelligence application. And we initially had written this using the term artificial intelligence, but we thought they might not know what it is. So we decided to just describe the functionality that we envisioned. But essentially, this functionality would be accomplished using AI. So here's the question. Excuse me. Imagine all smartphones had a built-in application that sensed when young people are using their phones, their smartphone in an addictive way. Excuse me. And that helped them regain control by doing two things. One, it would coach them. And two, it would temporarily limit their access to the addictive content. So the idea here is to intervene, right, at the pinnacle of the addictive behavior as it's being expressed, right? They're compulsively using their phone. It's to shut them off, right? So they have to stop. And then to also have some app that could coach them. Say, you're behaving in this way. Here's what it's doing to you. Here's why you need to stop. Here are some tips on how you can control it. You know, there's a lot of elaboration that could be provided, right? But here's these numbers I thought were remarkable. 44% they said they'd view it positively, this app, and 14% said they'd view it very positively, which of course is combined 58%, strong majority, said that this is a positive thing to have an app like this. Another type of solution was a public policy solution, basically a regulation. And again, this goes back to, so I asked the same question earlier, right? Based on Josh Hawley's idea of having a daily time limit. So the first question I asked previously that I already talked about was, should the companies that produce these apps have, include this time limit? What I'm asking here is, should there be a regulation requiring that they have this time limit, okay? So it's a law. And you'll see down there, 36% agree and 10% strongly agree. Excuse me. So combined, that's 46% basically say yes, there should be regulations. Not a majority, but close and pretty significant that kids would want a law that would impose this on them. This is the question that, of the solution that got, I was shocked at how high these numbers were, but another approach is to use culture, right? To change the culture and use sort of the creation or reinforcement of certain cultural values, excuse me, that would apply and that would help people reduce their smartphone use. So we asked, agree or disagree? It would be good if society began placing greater emphasis on developing within young people personal qualities that would help them regain control of their screen time. Qualities like discipline, self-control, sacrifice, and a focus on achievement. Now, we had this insight from some focus groups we had done. So we suspected that kids would react very positively to this, and I guess it bore out. This suspicion bore itself out. So you see below, 57% agreed that we should emphasize these qualities. And then 22% strongly agreed combined, that is 79%, almost 80% would like these values to be emphasized. And I suspect that this probably could be reflective of a broader desire for these values to be emphasized. In other words, I suspect that kids don't just want an emphasis on these values just to control the screen time, that there's a more general hunger for them to be coached and have, to live in a social milieu where discipline, self-control, sacrifice, and a focus on achievement is highly prized and emphasized. So that's it. I'll just give a brief summary here. So Number one, high school students, they spend a substantial amount of time every day. That's what we found here, right? On there for 6 hours a day on their phones, accessing content that's unrelated to school. Number two, their excessive phone use, it negatively impacts academic performance, their social lives, their involvement in extracurricular activities, and their happiness. Number three, high school students they're frustrated by this and wish they could control their phone use. Number four, students believe we should address smartphone addiction when people are young rather than waiting until they're adults. Number five, substantial numbers, in some cases strong majorities, strongly supported organized broad bold initiatives that will impose limits on young people's phone use. And then at the same time, also to help them develop the ability to independently self-limit their screen time. So there are two approaches here to helping. It's imposing limits and then helping them develop the ability to self-limit. And they're supportive of both. And number six, the broad-based solutions that they support include the integration of principles of digital wellness into the school curriculum, apps and app features that assist in reducing smartphone use, regulations, and then a renewed emphasis on key cultural values that would assist them in this goal. And then finally, just some of the implications here. Number one, we feel that schools really should develop a curriculum to teach students how to control their phone use. Number two, excuse me, and I will say we've given presentations on this. We've developed a whole presentation on doing this, creating a digital wellness school culture. We haven't developed a curriculum, but we've developed a framework, right, to help people make decisions and sort of engineer their school culture. And a component of that would be education. Number two, apps providers, we feel, should get serious about doing something to help young people by limiting the time they can spend each day using their apps. If these apps companies have to, face the fact that it's been well known since 2017. That was part of the reporting in 2017. It was all these social media executives like Sean Parker coming out and saying, well, we know that we're hurting people, and it was intentional, right? We feel that these apps providers have to take some kind of responsibility in addressing this problem. That's probably going to be hard. It's probably not going to happen. And for that reason, we really do feel, Josh Hawley introduced that bill to provide daily time limits on social media. We feel that Congress really should consider regulations to address this problem among youth. They're not happy about it, and they would be much happier if they could have some way of reducing their 6 hours a day to maybe 1.5, and spending that time doing other things that would enrich their lives. And then finally, we feel we should consider reviving these traditional values. Now, being someone of a certain age, I remember the 1980s, right? And these were values that were prized, and they were glamorized in the 1980s. Self-sacrifice, discipline, achievement. It was glamorized in the film industry, and it's not now. And somehow in the 90s and the 2000s, there was a shift, and it became kind of cool to, the focus shifted to having fun. Everything had to be fun. Fun had to be infused in everything that we do. And I do feel that that's to some extent facilitated this shift that's allowing us to say it's okay for kids to spend 6 hours a day screwing around their phones. So that's it. If anyone has any questions about the findings, they can feel free to email me at michael.mercier@screeneducation.org. And if they go to screeneducation.org, they go to the research tab, they can actually get a copy of this survey. So thank you very much.